that matter. With that, we're pleased to have Mr. Spreitzer with us. I've known him for quite a while when he was with the Archdiocese and going back to the now defunct NCCJ when I used to do some work with them along with our brother Walid Beg, who helped bring me into work in that organization. And as we know, our brother Walid is a leader amongst us in regards to interfaith work. Without going any further, we will pass the mic to Mr. Spreitzer for him to give us some of his thoughts in regards to sharing his thoughts and his community thoughts in regards to how the broader community is viewing Muslims and Islam at this general time, both positives and negatives, and to perhaps give us a few pointers in regards to how we have been presenting Islam and perhaps some of the wrong connections that we've been making, perhaps some constructive criticism. And I will then ask him a few questions, and then we'll open up the floor for any questions that you have from Mr. Spreitzer. With that, I will turn the mic over.
Thank you, Dawud. It's good to see your smiling faces. Okay, now we're all smiling. It's good, and it's nice to meet these two wonderful young men who I had only prayed about when my Habibi Dawud would tell me about, I had another child, and so I met two of them today. It's good to meet you, young men. So the NCCJ, I want to just give a little history. I've been doing interfaith work for about 20 years, and so just a little to get to the meat of the matter. But the key point I want to make, in case you were wondering, what did he talk about? Or you meet someone and say, what did Steve talk about? Well, the key point to make is that relationships are the antidote to prejudicial thinking. Relationships. Prejudicial thinking is to prejudge on insufficient evidence. And far too many Americans are prejudiced toward Islam because they don't have enough evidence. They haven't had the privilege of meeting you, seeing your smiles, praying and becoming friends with other Muslims. And so the key, I think, for Islam in America are Muslims who are ambassadors, who are reaching out. And many of you have reached out a lot. And so keep praying, so Allah will give you the strength to keep reaching. So, relationships. It's all about relationships. At the end of the day, I think. You are welcome to disagree with me, and I hope we have some disagreements or questions so we can better understand each other. Our organization began in 1927 in New York. What was happening in 1927? There was this nativist thinking at the time. Here comes all of these immigrants from Europe, Irish, Polish, Italians, Germans. One thing they had in common is they were Catholic. And so the anti-immigrant stuff isn't new. Back then, it was targeted not at Muslims, but at Catholics. And so, much like the anti-Muslim attitudes and discussion that came up when Barack Hussein Obama ran for president. When Al Smith ran for president in 1928, he was the first Catholic to run for president. So the things people would say, the bigoted and prejudicial speaking that would take place in people's homes, in their clubs, and at family gatherings about Catholics and immigrants, when Al Smith ran for president, they had public license, they thought, to speak negatively about Catholics and immigrants. They burned Catholic churches. Catholics were killed and beaten. And so an organization developed at that time to stand up for the immigrant community and this religious minority. Very interesting that NCCJ in Detroit, which became the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion, was probably one of the lead organizations that stood up for and stood with Muslims at a time, especially in 9/11, and even before then, as the Muslim community started to expand in southeast Michigan. So our organization is one that has continued to stand, and Dawud and I have been at press conferences together. Just a few things that we have done, when the Quran was desecrated at Guantanamo, we had a press conference at the Islamic Center of America, brought Jewish sisters and brothers of special courage together. When the Al-Islam Mosque, the Bengali brothers and sisters in Hamtramck wanted to broadcast the Adhan, some people in the city were opposed to that. So we helped to organize all the cousins, the Christians and Muslims in that town, to win the vote to allow the Muslims to broadcast the Adhan. Interesting, the Polish Catholics who'd been there for hundreds of years rang the bells all the time, never had permission to ring the bells. They had the majority, but it was the Muslim sisters and brothers who from the Quran believed that you must be a good neighbor, asked for permission, and together with their Catholic friends won permission. And now everybody can broadcast and ring bells and let the world know we should pray. So we also ended with the Oakland Press. They published a horrible political cartoon about Islam years ago. It was very negative. It showed a imam across his chest was theology of murder, and in the other side, in this confessional booth, if you have any understanding of that confession, it's when a Catholic would go to the priest and say, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," and the priest hears the sins and then says, "Well, here's your penance. Pray, do charity," or whatever. So they took the London subway bombing, remember, several years ago? The second time, the bombers' backpack failed to detonate, and so they were making a joke about that. But it really portrayed Islam in a horrible way. And so Dawud, Ghalib Beg, I think Imam Saleh and others, we went and met with the editor of the paper, the publisher of the paper, and the gentleman who decided to put the cartoon in. It turned out that none of those people had ever been to a mosque. None of them knew a Muslim, no relationship. And after talking to us, they felt the pain that Dawud and Imam Saleh and others, there were about 5 or 6 of them, I was a guest. After that, they went and visited the mosque. Victor Beg became a member of the Community Review Board, and I don't think they've published anything hurtful since then. But it took that going to them as good friends, and we didn't go there to beat on them, although we kind of wanted to for a minute. But because we pray and we're honest with each other, we were able to bring love and goodness to them and change their mind. When the Islamic Association, when the Islamic Organization of North America, Imam El-Turk's masjid in Warren was desecrated when they were building, when the Islamic Association, Islamic Center of America, and then Dar al-Hikmah and Karbala Center, when those masjids were desecrated, we went and stood together to say this is wrong. We brought Jews and others together to stand, and that's the sort of the work we've done. So we aren't strangers to this work. I just want to say that for me, the relationship piece, I grew up in Livonia, which is the largest all-white city in the United States. It still is. But at the Catholic school I went to growing up, while my dad was very racist, he would say some things, I heard him when I was growing up, and I would say, "Why are you saying that?" It's because of his own upbringing. Anyway, I had African-American nuns at my Catholic school. There's only one group of African-American nuns in the whole United States. They're out of Baltimore, and they ended up in Livonia teaching at my school. I was so lucky because I experienced diversity in a very different way than my father did. And I learned respect, and I learned to receive and give goodness with these women. On top of that, we had a Jewish lay teacher, Sheldon Siegel. What were they doing in Livonia? They snuck in. But I'm glad they did, because I at an early age, started to experience the other person as worthy and as valuable. So my first Muslim I met was Ilham Muhammad, who was an imam up in Lansing. And this was in the late 80s. We served as prison chaplains together for the state of Michigan. And when I had never met a Muslim until then. I was probably in my early 30s, or I don't know. You do the math, okay? But anyway,